Dr. Claude Vermeil rested both hands on the podium and looked directly across the terrace at Brigitte Bardot. 40 donors had gathered for the foundation's largest fundraiser of the year, their checkbooks already on the tables. Vermeil leaned closer to the microphone. "Before we accept celebrity support," he said, "perhaps we should ask a simple question." He paused just long enough for every head on the terrace to turn toward Bardot. "Has Mademoiselle Bardot ever personally paid to save a single animal?" 40 donors sat at white-clothed tables arranged in 5 rows across the stone terrace, their wine glasses catching the afternoon sunlight and creating small prisms of light on the tablecloths, their postures ranging from relaxed to attentive. 6 foundation board members occupied a long table at the front of the terrace, positioned on a raised platform 18 inches above the main floor level, their elevated positions creating clear sightlines to all other tables. 5 local officials in dark suits and 12 volunteers in matching foundation polo shirts stood around the terrace edges near the villa entrance, their bodies creating a human border between the seated guests and the stone archway leading into the house. Bardot sat at a center table in the 3rd row with 3 empty chairs beside her, 2 on her left and 1 on her right, a tan leather bag with brass hardware resting on the chair to her immediate right, its handle draped over the chair back. Her hands remained folded on the white tablecloth in front of her, fingers interlaced, thumbs touching, creating a stable triangle of flesh and bone. Vermeil's microphone amplified his words across the terrace and down to the garden below, the sound system creating slight feedback when he moved too close to the mesh head. The podium stood 10 feet from Bardot's table, positioned on the raised platform beside the board members' table, the wooden structure bolted to the platform surface to prevent movement. Vermeil's speech notes lay flat on the slanted podium surface, 3 pages of typed text with handwritten annotations in blue ink visible along the margins. Donors set down their forks with soft metallic clinks against porcelain plates and turned their chairs toward the podium, the metal legs scraping against the terrace stones with brief grinding sounds. If you're interested in untold stories from cinema's golden age, subscribe now. This is a fictionalized dramatization inspired by real public figures and historical settings. It does not depict a documented event. Vermeil adjusted his microphone stand downward 2 inches with his right hand, his fingers finding the adjustment ring and twisting counterclockwise, the mechanism releasing with a faint click, the chrome stand sliding down until the microphone head aligned with his mouth. "This foundation has maintained serious animal welfare work for 30 years, he said, his voice emerging from the speakers with professional clarity, each word distinct and separated. His right hand lifted from the microphone stand and gestured toward the board members seated beside the podium, his palm open and facing upward, his fingers spread in a presenting motion. "Recent celebrity endorsements sometimes lack financial substance," Vermeil continued, his voice dropping slightly in volume but maintaining clarity through the amplification system. Board members nodded in agreement, their heads moving in synchronized approval, 6 separate nods occurring within 2 seconds of each other, creating a wave of affirmation. "They bring attention but rarely bring sustained investment." The final word carried extra emphasis, Vermeil's lips forming each syllable with exaggerated precision. Donors whispered to each other behind raised napkins held at mouth level, their lips moving in rapid exchanges, their eyes darting from Vermeil to Bardot's table and back. One woman in a blue dress leaned toward her companion in a gray suit and spoke behind her raised hand, her palm creating a barrier between her mouth and the surrounding tables. A man near the back adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses with his right thumb and forefinger, pushing the frames higher on his nose, and looked from Vermeil to Bardot's table, his head turning in a slow pan, his eyes tracking the distance. "We've seen famous names attached to causes that benefit the celebrity more than the animals." Vermeil's voice rose slightly in volume, the amplification system capturing the increase and projecting it through the speakers with a slight distortion at the peaks. The microphone captured every word and sent it through speakers mounted on 4-foot poles at the terrace corners, the black speaker boxes angled downward to project sound across the assembled tables. His left hand joined his right on the podium edges, both palms pressing flat against the slanted wood surface. Volunteers stopped serving wine, their bottles frozen mid-pour above crystal glasses, the liquid suspended in motion as hands halted their tilting. Officials near the entrance crossed their arms over their chests in synchronized defensive postures, right arms crossing first, then left arms settling on top. Bardot's hands remained folded on the tablecloth in their interlaced position, her posture unchanged from 3 minutes earlier, her shoulders square to the table edge, her spine straight against the metal chair back. Vermeil looked directly at Bardot, his eyes finding hers across the 10 feet of horizontal space and 18 inches of vertical elevation difference, his gaze direct and unblinking. Does your commitment extend beyond photo opportunities and press coverage? The question hung in the air for 2 full seconds, the amplified sound fading into silence. No one speaking, no silverware moving, no chairs scraping. The room went quiet. Conversation ceased mid-sentence. Wine bottles stopped pouring. Background murmur dropped to zero. Have you personally invested money in animal rescue beyond lending your famous name to fundraising events? Vermeil's hands spread wide on both sides of the podium, his arms extending outward from his body, his palms facing upward in a questioning gesture that encompassed the entire terrace. All eyes turned toward Bardot's table. 40 pairs of donor eyes, 12 pairs of board and official eyes, 24 volunteer and staff eyes, 76 separate gazes converging on a single focal point in the third row. Donors turned in their chairs to watch Bardot, their bodies rotating 90 degrees from their forward-facing table positions, the metal chair legs scraping against stone in a chorus of grinding sounds. Board members leaned forward at their elevated table, their elbows coming to rest on the white cloth, their upper bodies angling toward Bardot's position, creating 6 forward-tilted silhouettes against the Mediterranean backdrop. Officials exchanged skeptical glances near the entrance, their eyes meeting in pairs, eyebrows raising, heads tilting in subtle expressions of doubt. A board member at the head table spoke up without standing, his voice carrying clearly even without amplification, the terrace acoustics projecting his words across the space. True activists show financial records of personal contributions. His right hand gestured toward Vermeil in agreement, his palm open, his fingers pointing at the podium. Other board members nodded in sequence, first the woman on his left, then the man 2 seats down, then 3 more in rapid succession, creating another wave of affirmation. Donors began closing their checkbooks, the leather covers meeting with soft slapping sounds that accumulated across the terrace. 1 slap, then 2, then 5, then 10, creating a percussive pattern of rejection. Pens were set down on tables with deliberate placement, creating small clicking noises as metal clips contacted porcelain plates or crystal glass bases. A local official near the entrance spoke to his companion in a stage whisper about needing serious long-term partners, his voice carrying farther than intended, reaching the first 3 rows of tables. Temporary celebrity attention doesn't save lives, another board member added. This one, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, her voice sharp and clear across the terrace. Volunteers around the terrace edges stopped all movement. Arms hung at sides, feet remained planted, heads stayed in fixed positions watching the exchange. The serving bottles remained on side tables positioned around the perimeter, abandoned mid-service, their dark glass reflecting sunlight. One donor in the second row folded his hands on the table in front of him and looked at Vermeil with an expression of expectant waiting. Another donor, a woman in a yellow sundress, pushed her checkbook 2 inches away from her plate with her right index finger, the leather cover sliding across the white cloth. The skeptical expressions multiplied across the terrace, mouths forming tight lines, eyebrows drawing together, heads tilting at doubting angles. Vermeil remained at the podium, both hands still gripping the wooden sides with sustained pressure, his body weight leaning slightly forward, his chest nearly touching the slanted surface. "We need proof of genuine commitment," he said into the microphone, each word separated by micropauses, creating a staccato rhythm. His microphone amplified each syllable across the terrace and into the garden below, the speakers creating slight echo as sound bounced off the villa's stone walls. Donors sat motionless in their chairs, 40 bodies frozen in their rotated positions, faces turned toward Bardot's table, hands resting on tablecloths or armrests. Board members maintained their forward-leaning positions on the elevated platform, their collective posture creating a line of scrutiny. No one moved, no hands lifted, no feet shifted, no heads turned, the entire terrace frozen in a tableau of judgment. Bardot reached to her right toward the leather bag on the empty chair, her right arm extending across the space, her fingers traveling 12 inches from her folded hand position to the bag's handle. Her hand closed around the brass and leather handle, her fingers wrapping completely, her thumb pressing against the opposite side. She lifted the bag onto her lap with a smooth motion, the leather making a soft rustling sound as it slid across the metal chair seat. Her fingers opened the brass clasp at the top of the bag with a distinct clicking sound, the mechanism releasing and separating into 2 pieces. She reached inside with her right hand, her fingers disappearing into the bag's interior, searching for 2 seconds before finding and grasping the target object. She removed a thick manila folder from the bag, the tan cardboard visible against the white tablecloth, the folder's size approximately 9 by 12 inches. She opened the folder on the table in front of her with both hands, her left hand holding the back cover flat, while her right hand lifted the front cover, revealing stacks of papers inside arranged in organized sections. The folder contained veterinary bills, rescue receipts, and documentation, white and cream-colored papers arranged in chronological sections, separated by colored divider tabs. Each paper showed typed text in various fonts, handwritten amounts in blue and black ink, official stamps in red and purple, clinic letterheads with logos and addresses printed at the top. The stack measured 2 inches thick, the papers compressed between the manila covers, the weight causing the folder to create a visible indentation in the white tablecloth. Donors in nearby tables stood from their chairs to see better, their bodies rising in sequence like a wave moving through a stadium. First, the 2 people at the table adjacent to Bardot's left, then 3 people at the table behind her, then 4 more at surrounding positions. Their standing created a ripple effect across the terrace, each person seeking a better viewing angle. Board members moved closer to Bardot's table, their chairs scraping against the raised platform floor with harsh grinding sounds, their feet carrying them down the platform steps and onto the main terrace level. Vermeil stepped down from the podium platform, his right hand releasing the wooden stand, his left hand steadying himself on the platform edge as he descended the 3 steps. He walked toward Bardot's table in measured steps, right foot, right foot, his polished black shoes creating distinct clicking sounds against the terrace tiles, each footfall echoing in the silence. His path crossed 15 feet of distance, his body moving at controlled speed, his eyes fixed on the open folder. The terrace fell completely silent, no conversations occurring anywhere, no silverware contacting plates, no wine being poured from bottles into glasses, no chairs moving. Vermeil reached Bardot's table and stopped at her right side, his body positioning him 18 inches from her shoulder. He looked down at the open folder, his head tilting forward 30 degrees, his eyes scanning the visible documents. 5 seconds passed. His breathing became audible in the silence, shallow inhalations and exhalations. His eyes scanned the top documents, veterinary receipts with clinic letterheads printed in blue and black ink, shelter bills with paid stamps in red covering payment amounts, medical expense records with dates spanning from 1968 through 1971, visible in chronological order. His right hand reached toward the folder edge, his fingers extending downward, his index finger and thumb preparing to grasp paper. His hand made contact with the top sheet. Vermeil's fingers lifted pages one at a time, examining document after document with deliberate slowness, receipt, bill, invoice, receipt, statement, each page revealing a new expense, a new date, a new proof of financial commitment. His face changed, the muscles around his mouth relaxing, the tight line of his lips softening, the skeptical furrow between his eyebrows smoothing. 10 seconds passed. Donors remained standing in their positions around nearby tables, their eyes fixed on Vermeil's examination, their bodies motionless, their breathing synchronized to shallow rhythms. Board members stood from their elevated table and moved closer to Bardot's position, descending the platform steps in single file and forming a loose semicircle around her table, their positions creating a 3/4 ring 6 feet from her chair. Officials near the entrance walked forward across the terrace, their dress shoes creating a pattern of clicks against stone, their bodies covering 30 feet of distance in 20 steps. 15 seconds passed. Vermeil's hand continued turning pages in the folder, each lift and release creating a soft rustling sound, each new document revealing additional expenses, dates extending backward in time. Vermeil straightened his spine, his vertebrae aligning, his head lifting from its forward tilt until he stood fully upright at his original height. He walked back to the podium with the same measured steps he had used to approach 15 feet of distance covered in reverse, his black shoes clicking against terrace tiles in the same rhythm. He climbed onto the platform using the 3 steps, his hands gripping the side rails for balance, his body rising 18 inches above the main terrace level. He returned to his position behind the wooden podium, his hands finding their original positions on both sides of the stand, his fingers wrapping around the edges. "I owe Mademoiselle Bardot a public apology," Vermeil said into the microphone, his voice traveling through the amplification system with the same clarity as his earlier challenge, the speakers projecting his words across every table. His voice traveled across the terrace with the same amplification as his earlier challenge, reaching the back rows and the garden below, bouncing off the villa walls. Her documentation shows years of personal financial commitment to animal rescue. Each word received equal emphasis, no syllable rushed, the sentence taking 6 full seconds to complete. Donors returned to their seats and reopened their checkbooks, the leather covers lifting in sequence across the terrace, one cover opening, then 2, then 5, then 15, creating a visual wave of reversal. Pens were picked up from tables where they had been set down minutes earlier, fingers wrapping around barrels, thumbs finding the click mechanisms. The sound of writing began, pen tips moving across paper checks, creating scratching sounds that accumulated into a chorus, ink flowing onto lines designated for amounts and signatures. 3 donors stood from their tables at positions in the second and fourth rows and approached Bardot's position, their paths converging on her table from different directions, one from the left, one from directly behind, one from the right front. They leaned forward to examine the documentation spread in the open folder, their hands gesturing toward specific receipts, their index fingers pointing at dates and amounts. One donor, a man in his 50s wearing a navy blazer, removed his own checkbook from his jacket pocket and pledged additional support, his voice carrying across the terrace as he announced a doubled contribution of 20,000 francs, the amount creating murmurs of approval from surrounding tables.